Crofting has been with us for hundreds of years, and it is a form of perhaps subsistence farming.
Crofting is like small-scale farming, like small holdings.
Crofts are, on the whole, very of small acreage, whereas mainland farms, understandably, perhaps are 10 times, 20 times bigger. Crofting takes place mostly on the western seaboard of North Uist because of the soil type there, which we call Machair land.
The Machair habitat is like a shell sand. It's a sandy soil structure, like free draining. It's like a dune habitat.
With quite a good high pH, and is very good for crops.
It's just been created over thousands of years, so it's very precious. It's quite rare.
On Bernary, the crofting is still done very much the same way as it always has been. The whole Machair is fully stocked and still ploughed and corn growing the way they've always done. They're keeping to the traditional ways of doing things.
Machair land is generally very flat and very easily cultivated.
And it's a very thin soil, so we don't deep plough, we shallow plough.
Machair land benefits from cropping and proper management. The crops that we grow here are mostly oats, and we have fields of grass for silage, and these are fed to sheep and cattle in particular.
In the summertime, then we take the cattle off and all the plants flower and seed. It's very, very sustainable. It's low input, which suits the Machair system. Well, there's seaweed available. We use that.
It was the only fertiliser used because all the crofters then were either full-time crofters or crofter fishermen.
There's also the cattle. They graze the habitat, and then we use their dung there as well. Well, things have changed here over the centuries. There used to be thousands of people.
In the past, it was mainly a manual task, and there were more people on the island perhaps then.
In my dad's time and my grandfather's time, it was more or less like an existence. You know, you're just, feeding yourselves. You made your own butter and jam. We don't spray anything, so there's a whole wide range of insects, and they all have their own habitats.
We have plenty of buzzards. Lapwings are very plentiful. We have stone chats, we have eagles nesting on the hills, we have sparrowhawks, and lots of ravens, crows.
We also have so many rare plants, don't we? You know, the orchids, and there's little different habitats in between the Machair area. The only issue that we have there with planting cereal oats on the Machair is the grey-lag geese. They come and destroy the crop.
Barnacle geese, they go away at April time. They never nest here. The grey-lag, the geese, they're nesting here on the Machair and on the offshore islands.
The major drawback would be perhaps soil erosion, because there's a lot of sand blow, especially in dry conditions.
The dunes are forever changing, and you get areas, they're just blowing with sand.
There definitely have been changes in the dune system, where perhaps 20, 30 years ago there was a dune. It no longer exists, and similarly dunes do appear in different places at different times.
The weather is changing slowly. It's not so seasonal as it was. Is not so reliable. We used to have sort of more harsher winters with more snow, but better summers.
I do remember when I was young, many years ago, and we used to go around barefoot in lovely sunshine.
Well, in my lifetime, I've seen definitely wetter and stormier in the Uist here. In my dad's time, they used to have long, dry summers, and they'd make hay in the summer, but now it's definitely wetter.
Sunshine sometimes in the summer months now is at a premium, and they're definitely, the climate has changed.
Some years with a bad storm, you can lose 2-3 meters, and then you might not have any sort of for a while, and it's the power of the tide. It's pretty extreme.
Well, I'm a member of Access Archaeology, which is the local group of people who are basically interested in the archaeology of the Uists and trying to find out what's here and preserve what we've got. We've got a really rich archaeological heritage here, and so much of it's disappearing. It's really important to try and find out what's here.
Oh, it's drastic. We're losing a huge amount almost daily with every bad storm and with every really high tide. There's huge amounts of archaeology actually just disappearing into the sea.
Kind of makes sense. Big storms crashing into unstable land. It's going to happen, innit?
We had one very bad storm in 2005, and that was the worst that anybody can remember anywhere in the islands.
Was a devastating storm.
It came when there was a spring tide and high tide, a low pressure and a westerly wind, and it pushed the tide a lot higher than it normally would.
It was an awful storm.
That did a lot of damage, and power and water was off for days, and food lines were down.
Slates off roofs, corrugated sheeting flying around.
And roads were closed, causeways were damaged.
Some were submerged in the heavy seas.
Very worrying, and I hope it's once in a lifetime.
Before the storm in 2005, the whole coastline of the whole west coast of North Uist looked quite a bit different. The sea has overnight at that time, the sea did a huge amount of damage and took away a lot of archaeology, but it also revealed a lot of interesting stuff. So there's a lot of new things to look at.
I hadn't realised there was so much archaeology on this beach, and it's just getting eroded away, as you know, on a daily basis. So I think it's very important that we look at it and find out and glean what information we can.
I think it's great to have communities involved in the archaeology. Since the big storm, certainly, I think there's been a huge interest in archaeology, and I think that's been because of Scape's involvement in the coastal archaeology project at Machair and now here at Lochpable.
I think it's very important to have local people involved. I think it enriches your knowledge of local history, and given that the people within the community here have most likely been here for their ancestors have been here for hundreds of years, so actually it's really important to them. You've got a very immediate link with the landscape.
And I think that the interest of the local people is important, and to keep the local people informed, because it is their heritage.
I have noticed that the tide levels are rising very slowly, but the tides are rising. All the Machairs and the areas that are cultivated for crops, they are very low.
With the sea level expected to rise in the next few decades, that has an impact on on that habitat. There could be erosion.
The tide is actually coming in over this whole area, so by later on this afternoon this will be covered up by the tide again.
Ideally, I would like to see as much money as possible spent to record what is there, to record the heritage of Uist, because obviously there was a huge amount of settlement on the west coast that hasn't been recorded.
If there was help and money available to protect the shoreline, and in whatever way, building it up or shoring it up to protect it from the rising tide, that might be needed.
It'd be very hard to stop, I think, because there's miles of coastline, and it would be probably have to be armoured with rock, and rock isn't available really. I think in certain areas around the airport at Ballyvanich that has been done, and it's proved successful. But on a large scale, I think it would be very, very tricky to do.
I'm of the opinion that if Machair land is cultivated in the manner in which it's been done over many, many years, there is a good future for Machair cropping.
Who do you think are the best people to be managing the Machair?
Naturally, Crofters.